baseline, first descender, second descender. We're going into an oval, so entrance stroke halfway. Oval. A descending stem loop. So start at the header line. Release pressure as you approach the second descender. Curl back around. And when I usually meet the hairline to the shade a little bit below the baseline. Then after that, an exit stroke. So if we put that together, entrance, oval, descending stem loop, lift, and then exit stroke. So now it looks like this hairline continues through the shade. I'll show you what happens if I don't lift my pen in between the strokes. So normally I would lift right here, but I'm just going to drag through so I can show you. If you don't lift your pen, this shade is still wet with ink. And if you drag through it, it drags the ink through with it. So right here, there's a little blob. So here's a little note to remember to lift. That's why these are all separate strokes. The stem loop is a separate stroke than the exit stroke. I'll do one more. Lift, exit. Alright, now I'm going to make an H. I am not going to use this as the baseline for my H because I will not have enough room. So I'm going to use this as the baseline and the header. First ascender and second ascender. So like all letters so far, we begin with an entrance all the way up to the header. Then we do an ascending stem loop, just a normal one. So we'll start at the header, loop around, go up to the second ascender, come back to the baseline. Now we get to do a compound curve for the first time. This stroke. So let's put that together. Entrance stroke. Ascending stem loop. You see how I intersected that here again? I'll fix it on the next one. So now we have a compound curve. So we're going to start here at the baseline right next to the shade. Sometimes I start a little bit above it just so that I don't drag any ink from that shade. Like there, I just dragged some ink, I think. I'm just retouching up this bottom. Sometimes if you notice that your hairlines are getting thick, you might have something on your nib, like a piece of the paper came off and got stuck to the end of your nib. So every once in a while, if you want to clean off the nib with a paper towel. So I just cleaned my nib off. Now I'm going to redip it. Alright. Let's try another H. That was a little bit better of an intersection with the hairline intersecting the shade up here rather than down here. compound curve. So like we talked about, the bottom third of this hairline is at 55 degrees, and so is this shade. So the hairline and the shade will kind of overlap for this small portion. So because of that, you can start a little bit to the right or a little bit higher so that you don't drag the ink like that kind of flows. Here's some H's. Let's go on to I. I is pretty simple, it just has entrance stroke. An underturn. And then a dot. Normally I put this dot about halfway between the header and the first ascender. Entrance, underturn, and dot. Let's do a J. Baseline, header, first ascender, second ascender. Start with an entrance stroke. Descending stem loop. Exit stroke. And another dot. Again, I lifted as I went through that shade. Right here, lift. Trying to get a square top each time. I'll do one more. Lift. Letter K. Let's make this our X height, so base, header, first and second ascender. Begin with an entrance stroke, as always. Ascending stem loop. Then you start making the shape that goes into an overturn. So this hairline that goes up and over. But instead of continuing down with a shade, I just draw a little dot right there. And then we're going to start the next stroke at the point where this hairline leaves the 55 degrees, so somewhere around here. And we're going to do the end of a compound curve. So we're going to go down and then back up. So we'll start it at this height, down and back up. Entrance, ascending stem loop, dot, start here to the end of a compound curve, you could, if you wanted, make a loop here. Like sometimes a K is made with a loop and then you continue down if you want to do that. Alright, let's do an L. We have the same baseline and header line for the L. Entrance. And then this is going to be like the B, where we make an ascending stem loop, but instead of ending with the squared bottom, we come to a point at the end. I'm going to draw this as a separate stroke just so it's more clear. So that's a point at the end. If we added a comma dot right here, it would turn into a B. So M does not start with an entrance stroke like every single letter we've done so far. M starts with an overturn. Then another overturn. And then a compound curve. Oops, a little bit wiggly on that line. So let's try an M. Overturn. Overturn. Compound curve. And like we talked about with the H, there's going to be a little bit of overlap when the angle of the stroke is the same, but you should get some space in here, a triangle shaped space. Overturn, overturn, compound curve. Now I dragged the ink up into this space a little more than I would have liked. So sometimes I try to leave a little bit of a gap just so I don't do that. There's M. N is extremely similar. And I just messed it up already. We do not start like every single letter we've done before. We start with an overturn. And then we do instead of 2 overturns in a compound curve, it's just 1 overturn in a compound curve. Overturn. Compound curve. So there you go, M and N.